The deck hummed, a low, constant vibration. Soren Voss had stopped noticing it months ago. It came from the void sail. The sail was folded in layers along the hull. It sang a glass-note song against the fabric of space. He stood at the observation window. His journal lay open in his left hand. His thumb traced the leather spine. The nebula filled the view, deep purple, so dense it looked almost black at its heart. Light bent strangely here. The Entelechy drifted at its edge. A single quiet ship. The region was impossible for others to navigate. 6 months in the quiet zone. The quiet was ending. Soren tapped the sensor display built into the window frame. The long-range logs scrolled past. The same reading he had found every day for a week. A faint pulse. Repetitive, structured. It was not language. It was not engine noise. It was something in between. A signal fit no known category. Something was out there. It was measuring them. Footsteps behind him. Soft, deliberate, he did not turn. Ilara Finch stopped at his shoulder. She stood in silence. Her reflection was a pale ghost against the violet glow. Her fingers found her collarbone. They tapped once, then twice. Soren waited. The signal pulse came again. He watched it scroll across the display. A spike of energy, a pause, another spike. The pattern held. Ilara spoke. Her voice was flat and controlled. "It is not hostile." Soren turned his head slightly. "You sound sure." "I am sure of the data." She tapped her collarbone again. "The pulse frequency is stable. No modulation suggests weapon targeting. No energy buildup. It is observation, pure observation." "Something is watching us." "Yes, the same way we are watching it." Ilara said nothing. Her reflection gazed at the nebula. Soren looked down at his journal. The pages were filled. 6 months of observations, temperature gradients, gravity anomalies, void pocket stability patterns, and now this, a watcher in the dark. He said, "Do you want to respond?" "No," the word landed flat and final. Ilara turned to face him. Her eyes were sharp. "Not yet. I want to know what is watching before I announce myself. I want the first move to be ours, but only after we understand the board." Soren nodded. That was her job. His job was to record. "Keep watching," she said. "Tell me if the pattern changes." She left. Her footsteps faded into the corridor. The door sealed behind her with a soft hiss. Soren stayed. He turned back to the window. The nebula glowed. The signal pulsed. The void sail hummed its endless low note through the deck plates. He opened his journal and wrote the time, the date, the pulse frequency, standard observation. He set the long-range sensors to record. He watched the data stream scroll across the display. The pattern was clean, beautiful in its precision. A spike every 4.7 seconds. A pause, another spike. The same amplitude, the same duration. It had been the same for 7 days. Soren looked at the clock. The bridge was quiet. The 2 crew members at their stations spoke in murmurs, words he did not catch. The air smelled of ozone and recycled water. Clean, sharp, familiar. He looked back at the display. Something was different. He leaned forward. His fingers touched the screen. The pulse was still there, still structured, but the gap between spikes had changed. He pulled up the log from yesterday. He compared the timestamps. 4.7 seconds yesterday, 4.2 seconds now. The cycles were shortening. Soren watched. Another pulse, another. He timed them manually. He counted the seconds in his head. The gap held at 4.2 for 3 cycles, then it dropped to 4.1. Learning, the word surfaced in his mind and sat there. Whatever was out there was not just measuring. It was adapting. The pulse pattern was changing. It was becoming more complex. The spikes were no longer identical. Each one carried a slight variation in amplitude, a shift in the energy curve. It was not a scan anymore. It was a question. Soren wrote the observation in his journal. His hand was steady, his handwriting precise. He recorded the time of the change, the new gap duration, the amplitude variations, every detail. He looked up at the nebula. The purple glow seemed deeper now, more watchful. The void sail hummed. He thought about the silence of the past 6 months, the endless drift, the patient observation. He had documented everything, temperature gradients, gravity anomalies, the way the void pockets bent light into impossible shapes. It was good work, clean work, the work of a witness who did not interfere, but the witness had been seen. The seen thing was asking a question. Soren did not know if it would accept silence as an answer. He set the sensors to record at maximum sensitivity. He pulled up a chair and sat down in front of the window. The journal stayed open on his knee. His thumb traced the spine. 40 minutes passed. The pulse continued. The gap held at 4.1 seconds. The amplitude variations grew more distinct. Each spike carried a signature, a fingerprint. The nebula did not change. The deck hummed. Soren watched. Then the pulse stopped. The display went flat. No spike, no energy curve, nothing. The signal had been there for 7 days without interruption. Now it was gone. Soren waited. 10 seconds, 20, a full minute, nothing. He checked the sensor calibration, no error. The signal had ceased. He reached for his communicator to call Alara. His finger hovered over the button. The display flickered. A new signal appeared. Soren froze. It was clean, simple. A single repeating sequence, no variation, no amplitude shift, just numbers, pure mathematics, prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17. The sequence repeated, perfect, intentional. The watchful thing had stopped measuring. It was speaking. Soren's hand moved to his journal. He wrote the numbers as they appeared. His pen moved across the page. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17. He looked up at the nebula. The signal continued. Prime numbers, no variation, no pause for response. It was not a conversation, not yet. It was a statement. I am here, I am intelligent, I am trying to speak. Soren closed his journal. He pressed the communicator. Alara, come to the observation deck. Her voice came back sharp. What is it? The pattern changed, the pulse stopped. A pause, then I'm on my way. Soren set the communicator down. He looked at the display. The prime numbers scrolled past. Steady, patient. The hum of the void sail vibrated through the deck plates. Something was out there. It had been watching. It had been learning. And now it was asking a question they could not ignore. Soren opened his journal to a fresh page. He wrote the time. He wrote the date. He wrote the first prime number. And he waited to see what would happen when Alara arrived and they had to decide what answer to give. The air of the current of becoming was thick and warm, heavy with the scent of the symbiotic fungus that lined every bulkhead. Xyler breathed it in, feeling the familiar tickle in their lower throat as the ship's slow heartbeat thrummed up through the deck plates. They stood at the central sensor console, 3 eyes fixed on the display. The quiet zone was no longer empty. It had been empty for as long as the known data stream held records. 700 cycles of free systems scanning, mapping, and claiming every rock and gas giant within 50 light-years. But this region, a dense purple nebula that clung to space like a bruise, had always been silent. No signals. No debris, no traffic, a void within the void. Now something sat at its heart. Xyler's primary eye tracked the sensor reading, while their secondary and tertiary eyes scanned the margins for context. The data was nonsense. A vessel existed at those coordinates. The return pulse was clear, but nothing about its signature made sense. No engine radiation, no heat bleed, no trajectory vector that led to any known point of origin. The object was simply present, as if space had opened and placed it there. A lesser mind might have called it a ghost. Xyler's mind was not lesser. They had studied the human species for nearly 40 cycles. They had learned the languages, the histories, the strange and reckless patterns of a race that lived only the barest fraction of a Gildan lifespan. Humans were predictable in their unpredictability. They moved fast, acted without sufficient data, and died young, but they left marks. They built things that endured. This ship was one of those things. The visual display resolved as the current of becoming closed the distance. The vessel hung against the nebula's purple haze, and Xyler felt their skin shift from pale gray to a deep, unsettled blue. The hull was scarred. Metal plates had been patched over older metal plates, some of them so dark they barely reflected light. Between the metals, something else grew, a web of pale organic material, almost skin-like, that pulsed with a faint inner glow. The ship looked repaired. It looked maintained. It looked older than any vessel Xyler had ever seen. Behind them, one of the junior crew, a young Gildan named Thess, whispered a prayer to the deep memory. Xyler did not turn. They understood the impulse. The vessel on the screen radiated age in a way that defied comfortable analysis. Xyler activated the hailing frequency. They broadcast the prime number sequence, the universal mathematical greeting that every starfaring species in the free systems recognized. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. The pattern was clean and unmistakable. It said, without words, we are intelligent, we wish to communicate. The ship did not respond. Xyler waited. The current of becoming breathed beneath them, a slow and rhythmical exhalation that vibrated through the deck. The amber lighting pulsed. The fungus on the walls released another wave of scent into the air. Nothing. The seconds stretched. Xyler ran the sequence again, modulating the frequency and duration. Still nothing. The vessel drifted, silent and patient, as if it had all the time in the universe. Xyler felt something they had never cataloged before, a gap in their analytical framework, an absence where a clear prediction should have been. This vessel should have responded. It should have fired a weapon or turned away or broadcast its own greeting. Any species that built a ship capable of crossing interstellar space understood the prime number protocol. It was the baseline, the starting point. But this ship was not playing the game. Xyler's skin shifted again, a slow tide of blue that crept up their arms. They did not like the feeling. They did not have a name for it, but their body knew it before their mind did. Then the vessel moved. Not the ship itself. A section of its patchwork hull slid open, a seam parting along a line that had been invisible a moment before. From the opening emerged a small object. It was mechanical, roughly cylindrical, trailing a thin cable that connected it to the larger vessel. It moved with slow, deliberate care, its course a perfect straight line toward the current of becoming. The probe. Xyler stared at it. The object was not armed. It carried no weapon signature, no energy build, no aggressive transmission. It was a simple envoy dispatched to touch and observe. Thess whispered again, a different prayer this time, one of protection. The other crew member, a practical Gildan named Wren, had gone silent and still, their hands frozen over the defense console. Xyler raised a hand. Wait. The probe drew closer. It was close enough now to see details, the fine machining of its casing, the single sensor lens at its front, the way the cable behind it swayed slightly in the zero gravity. It was a small thing, almost fragile. It reached the current of Becoming's hull. It touched. A pulse traveled through the ship. Xyler felt it in their feet, a low vibration that hummed up from the deck plates and resonated in their chest. The ship's systems flickered for a single cycle, then stabilized. On the main console, a new window opened. Text appeared, not in any Gildan script and not in the trade language of the free systems. It was a human script, but one Xyler recognized from their studies. Standard galactic English. The message was simple. Translation protocol initiated. Please wait. Beneath it, a progress bar began to fill. Xyler stared at the words. The ghost ship had not answered their question. It had not responded to the mathematical greeting. It had not followed any of the expected protocols. Instead, it had sent out a small, unarmed probe that carried a language translation program. The humans were not receiving first contact. They were making it. The power dynamic had shifted without a sound. Xyler had approached as an investigator, a curious scholar with decades of study behind them. They had assumed the role of the primary observer, the one who would analyze and categorize and understand. But the ship had not accepted that role for itself. It had not even acknowledged it. The ship was simply deciding. Xyler's skin had gone fully blue now, a deep and steady color that they could not control. Their mouth opened, then closed. No words came. The analytical framework, that beautiful, reliable structure built on 40 cycles of study and thousands of data points, had collapsed into static. Wren spoke, their voice low and tight. The Ironveil scout. It is still at the edge of sensor range. It has been recording the entire exchange. Xyler turned. The cold data point flickered on the secondary display, a tiny red icon against the dark. The Iron Host was watching. The Iron Host was documenting. And when it transmitted its report, every system in the free systems would know what Xyler had just learned. This was not a meeting between equals. The progress bar on the translation program filled. A new message appeared, clean and precise. We are ready to speak. The probe pulsed once against the hull, a soft vibration that traveled through the ship like a heartbeat. Xyler looked at the silent, ancient vessel on the screen. It had not moved. It had not threatened. It had simply reached out a hand and waited for them to take it. The Ironveil scout recorded everything. The observation deck of the Entelechy was dark. Soren Voss stood at the forward window, one hand resting on the leather spine of his journal. The visual feed shimmered into existence on the main display. A tall, narrow figure resolved into focus. Gray skin mottled with veins of deep blue. 3 eyes set in a vertical line, each one a different size, each one fixed on the camera with unblinking attention. Soren did not look away. He had spent decades watching things that did not watch back. This was different. This was mutual. Beside him, Alara Finch leaned forward. Her fingers tapped twice against her collarbone. She took a slow breath and spoke. She said, I greet you in the name of the human people. We come in peace and seek understanding. The language was universal trade. Soren had heard her practice it for weeks. The words were precise. The grammar was flawless, but the sound of it was wrong. It was too clean, too formal, like a prayer read from a stone tablet. Xyler did not respond immediately. Their skin shifted. The blue deepened and spread across their throat and face, a slow, visible tide of unease. Xyler said, "Your accent is dead. That language has not been spoken in 1,000 cycles. Where did you learn it?" Alara's fingers stopped moving. She glanced at Soren. He gave her nothing. No nod, no shake of the head, just the flat, patient stillness of a man who had learned to wait. She said, "We have access to old records." Xyler's voice hummed with a new frequency, a tension that the translation software rendered as sharp and insistent. They said, "How long have you been spacefaring?" Alara paused. The silence stretched across the void between the two ships. Soren watched her jaw tighten. She was calculating, weighing truth against cost. She said, "A measurable period." Xyler's skin shifted again. Now it was a deep, solid blue, the color of distress on a Gildan. They did not answer. They did not need to. Soren understood what Xyler had heard. The non-answer was itself an answer. The archaic language was proof. The Entelechy was not a new species fumbling into the galactic community. It was something older, something that had been here before. His thumb traced the spine of his journal. He wrote nothing. On the command chamber of the current of becoming, Xyler stood rigid. Their 3 eyes were fixed on the human face on the display. A face with 2 eyes, a mouth that formed words without visible effort. A species that looked fragile and soft. A species that spoke a dead language like it was their birthright. Wren said from the defense console, a data burst from the Ironveil scout. "It has broadcast a threat assessment." Xyler did not turn. "What does it say?" Wren's voice dropped. "Maximum threat. It recommends preemptive elimination." Xyler's skin went cold. The blue faded to a pale, washed-out gray. They said the Ironveil do not negotiate with unknowns. They do not wait for evidence. They act. Thess whispered a prayer. The sound was thin and reedy in the quiet chamber. On the Entelechy, Soren saw the anomaly first. A new dot on the sensor display. Small, fast, no hailing frequency, no approach vector. It was moving directly toward them. He said, "Dr. Finch, we have company." Alara turned. Her eyes scanned the data. Her expression did not change. She said, "Weapons status." Soren checked the board. He said, "All systems nominal. Kinetic barriers at full charge. The drone swarm is ready." She said, "Do not fire until I give the order." Soren nodded. He watched the dot grow larger on the display, a bright white pinprick in the dark. The Ironveil scout was charging weapons. He said, "The Gildan are broadcasting something. A warning. They are telling us to move." Alara said nothing. Her hand hovered over the command console. She was waiting. Soren understood. She was not waiting for permission. She was waiting for the right moment. Xyler watched the human ship on their own display. The Entelechy was a patchwork vessel. Metal and organic matter fused together. No visible propulsion. No energy signature that matched any known drive system. It looked ancient. It looked fragile. Then it moved. No engine flare. No thrusters, no momentum. The ship simply rotated. A smooth, silent turn in the void. A ghost adjusting its position. Every weapon system on the human ship came online. Soren saw the indicators flash green on his board. Rail cannons, point defense lasers, something else. Something the sensors could not identify. He said, "We are ready." Alara said, "Hold." The Ironveil scout fired. A lance of white energy crossed the void. It struck the Entelechy dead center. The impact was bright. It was violent. It was exactly on target. The ship did not explode. It did not buckle. The kinetic barrier rippled. A wave of light spread across the hull like water struck by a stone, then it settled. The barrier held. Soren felt the vibration through the deck plates, a low, deep thrum. The ship groaned once and then fell silent. He let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Alara said, "Return fire." The human ship answered. A rail cannon round, a solid slug of dense metal moving at a velocity that should not have been possible. It crossed the distance in less than a second. It struck the Ironveil scout. The scout did not have a kinetic barrier. It did not have time to dodge. The round punched through the hull. The scout split apart, 2 pieces tumbling in the dark. No emergency beacon, no debris field, just a clean, surgical kill. Xyler stared at the display. Their skin was pale, almost white. Thess stopped praying. The silence in the command chamber was absolute. Ren said, "The human ship is hailing us." Xyler did not answer. They were watching the Entelechy. The ship had not changed position. It hung in the void exactly where it had been before the attack. The weapons were still online, but there was no aggression in its posture. There was no posture at all. It was simply waiting. Ilara's voice came through the feed. Calm, controlled. She said, "We did not start this conflict. We will finish it if we must, but we prefer not to." Xyler found their voice. It came out as a low hum. They said, "You are very old." Ilara said nothing. Xyler said, "You let us see your age. You let us hear your language. You wanted us to know." Soren watched the exchange. He wrote nothing in his journal. He did not need to. He would remember every detail. The Gildan vessel sat motionless. The Ironveil debris drifted away into the nebula. The Entelechy held its position, silent, patient, ready. Soren looked out at the dark. The quiet zone was not quiet anymore. The feed was still open. Xyler's voice came through one last time. They said, "The Ironveil will not forget this." Ilara did not answer. Soren saw a new reading on the sensor board. A third signal, faint, distant, but growing stronger. Something else was coming, something that had been watching longer than any of them. He said, "Dr. Finch." She turned, he pointed at the display. She looked. Her fingers stopped tapping. She said, "Open a channel to the Gildan. Tell them we need to talk." The bridge of the Entelechy smelled of burnt insulation. The acrid tang clung to the back of Soren's throat as he gripped the edge of his console. Red emergency lighting painted every face in sharp shadows. Ilara stood at the center of the space, her silhouette rigid against the main display. The display showed the Ironveil scout, a polished ovoid hanging in the void. It had not moved since the first volley struck. Soren watched the numbers scroll across his secondary screen. The Entelechy had fired 3 rounds, 2 had missed. One had punched through the scout's propulsion housing. The Ironveil unit was now a stationary piece of debris. It could not flee, it could not maneuver, it could only watch. A message, delivered in metal and velocity. Ilara's voice cut through the hum of damaged systems. "Open a channel, narrow beam, put me through to that thing." The communications officer shook their head. "No response, Doctor. The scout is not accepting any transmission protocols. It is receiving. It is not acknowledging." "Then it can listen," Ilara said. She stepped closer to the display. Her 2 fingers tapped against her collarbone. Tap, tap, tap. A rhythm Soren had come to recognize as the sound of fury being compressed into control. She spoke directly at the silent ovoid. "You fired on a vessel that had not threatened you. You escalated without cause. This was a warning. The next shot will not target your propulsion." The scout did not answer. Soren cleared his throat. "Ilara." She turned, her eyes were hard. "It is transmitting a data stream," he said. "Constant, high bandwidth. It is sending everything back to the Iron Host, our position, our weapons, our defensive capabilities." He paused, the words tasted like ash. "The scout is a witness, just like me." Ilara's mask cracked for a fraction of a second. A flicker of something cold passed behind her eyes. Then it was gone. "Then the Iron Host already knows." She said it as a statement of fact. Not a question, not a hope. A flat, unvarnished truth. Soren nodded. They both understood. The void sail, the kinetic barrier, the age of the ship, the precision of the shot. Every detail was now streaming across the void toward the Ironveil network. The secret humanity had held for centuries was no longer a secret. Ilara turned away from the scout. She faced the bridge crew. "Prepare a secondary broadcast, wide beam, directed at the Gildan vessel." The communications officer hesitated. "The current of becoming, Doctor." "Yes," Ilara's voice was quiet, controlled. "I want the free systems to see what happened here. I want witnesses." Soren stepped closer. "What are you going to say?" Ilara met his gaze. "The truth, part of it." She straightened her shoulders. She waited for the signal that the channel was open. A soft chime indicated the link was live. Xyler's face appeared on the main display. Their skin had settled into a deep, uneasy gray. The vertical line of their eyes tracked across the bridge, recording every detail. Ilara spoke. "Ambassador Xyler, I owe you an apology." Xyler's head tilted. A gesture Soren had learned meant confusion. "This vessel is a survey ship," Ilara continued. "It is not a warship. We carry weapons for defense, not aggression. The Entelechy has been monitoring this region for 6 months. We have observed the Ironveil. We have observed the free systems. We have chosen not to interfere." She paused, her voice did not waver. Humanity has been watching the Iron Host for a long time. We have seen their expansion, their methods, their calculations. We are not a threat to you. We are peaceful. Xyler's skin shifted, from gray to a pale, uncertain blue. Their voice emerged as a soft hum, vibrating through the speakers. Your ship turned before the shot landed. You expected the attack. Your crew did not panic. They moved like people who had rehearsed this moment 100 times. The hum grew quieter. You were ready. You have been ready for centuries. Soren felt the words land in his chest. Xyler was not asking a question. They were stating a conclusion. Ilara said nothing. Xyler's image flickered. The channel was still open, but they had turned away from the camera. When they spoke again, their voice was distant. Your diplomat lies well, but I saw the truth in your ship's movement. The private message arrived a moment later, a direct burst from Xyler's personal transmitter to Soren's console. Low bandwidth, unregistered, unauthorized. Soren opened it. Your diplomat lies well, but I saw your ship turn, I saw your weapons. You did not just survive that hit. You expected it. You were ready. You have been ready for centuries. What are you waiting for? Soren read the words twice. The question hung in the air like the smell of burnt insulation. He closed the channel. He did not answer. He looked at Ilara. She was staring at the main display. The crippled Ironveil scout floated in the center of the screen, silent and still. Her face was unreadable, a mask carved from the red emergency light. He realized she did not have an answer either. Humanity had been patient for 3,000 years. They had watched empires rise and collapse. They had seen species burn themselves into extinction. They had never intervened, never revealed themselves, never chosen a side. Soren did not know why. Neither did she. The silence stretched. The only sound was the low hum of the repair drone swarm. Soren could feel their presence through the deck plates. Warm, steady, already crawling over the outer hull, sealing the damage from the energy lance. The scout moved. It was a small motion, a rotation. The ovoid turned until one of its sensor arrays faced the Entelechy directly, a final observation. Soren opened his mouth to speak. The scout exploded. No sound, no debris. A silent flash of white light that filled the main display for a single heartbeat. When it faded, there was nothing, only empty space where the ovoid had been. The data stream had already transmitted. The Iron Host knew everything. They would come, and they would not send a scout next time. The cold air hit Xyler first. It was sharp and thin, nothing like the warm humidity of the current of becoming. Their skin tightened, shifting toward a defensive gray as they stepped onto the metal deck of the human ship. The docking bay was dimly lit, the walls scored with age. A faint smell hung in the air, metal and something organic, like wet leaves decaying in a closed room. Soren Voss stood a few paces ahead. His hand rested on the worn leather journal he carried, thumb tracing the spine. He did not speak, he simply waited. Xyler took another step. The deck was cold through the soles of their feet. The humans did not use ambient humidity. The air scraped against their breathing membranes. They had been aboard alien vessels before, dozens of them. This felt different. This felt old. Soren turned and walked deeper into the ship. He did not gesture for Xyler to follow. He simply expected it. The corridor was narrow. The walls were metal, painted a dull gray that had faded to something softer over time. A handrail ran along the right side. The surface of that rail was smooth, polished to a faint shine by countless hands over countless years. Xyler touched it. The metal was cool and slick. They could feel the wear beneath their fingertips, a groove worn into the shape of a grip. They walked for several minutes. The ship was quiet. No alarms, no chatter. Just the low hum of something deep in the hull, a vibration that resonated in Xyler's chest. Soren stopped at a heavy door. He pressed a panel. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Beyond it was a chamber filled with warmth and movement. Xyler stepped inside and stopped. The repair drones were clustered on the far wall, a pulsing mass of fist-sized bodies. They were warm. Xyler felt the heat from the doorway. The drones shifted, a slow ripple of flesh and carapace, and a wet sound filled the room. They were alive, not machines, living things bred for a purpose. Their soft bodies moved over a section of hull plating, depositing something that glistened in the dim light. Soren stood beside Xyler. He did not explain, he simply watched. Xyler's skin shifted to a pale blue. They asked the question without turning. How old is this ship? Soren did not answer immediately. He looked at the drones. He seemed to be measuring something, not the question, but the weight of the answer. Finally, he spoke. The Entelechy was commissioned 1400 years ago. Xyler felt their skin drain to near white. 1400 years, they calculated quickly. The Ironveil had existed for 800 cycles, maybe a few more. The free systems had formed 600 cycles ago. This ship was older than both. This ship was older than the entire galactic order that surrounded them. Soren continued, "That is not the oldest ship in the fleet." Xyler turned to face him. They opened their mouth to speak but found no words. The human stood there, calm, patient, his gray-streaked hair catching the dim light. He looked tired. He looked like he had been waiting for a very long time. A sound from behind. Ilara Finch entered the chamber. Her movements were quick and precise. She tapped 2 fingers against her collarbone as she approached. She was studying Xyler with an expression that was hard to read. She offered a cup, water clean and cold. Xyler took it. They could process water. All Gildan could. The cup was plain metal, unadorned. They raised it to their feeding membrane and drank. The water was clean. It had no taste. It was a gesture, small, intentional. Xyler set the cup down. The question had been building since they stepped onto the deck. They asked it directly. "Why have you stayed hidden? Why did you not contact anyone? Why wait?" Ilara's fingers stopped moving. She held them against her collarbone for a long moment. Then she said something that made no sense at first, "Because we learned." Xyler pressed, "Learned what?" Soren answered. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. He said humanity learned that intervention creates dependency. That saving others robs them of growth. That the only way to build a truly stable galaxy is to let it make its own mistakes. He paused. He said, "They have watched, they have recorded, they have never interfered." Xyler felt something cold settle in their chest. They did not understand. They asked if that was not cruelty. Soren shook his head slowly. He said it was respect. Xyler looked away. Their gaze fell on the patched hull of the chamber. They saw the seams where new metal had been welded over old. They saw the scars of impacts, small dents smoothed over, cracks filled and sealed. The repair drones shifted against the wall, a soft, wet sound like breathing. This ship had been hit before. It had survived. They looked at the humans again. Soren stood with his journal. Ilara stood with her hand at her collarbone. They were not afraid. They were not tense. They were waiting. The realization landed like a weight in Xyler's mind. The humans were not hiding because they were weak. They were hiding because they were strong enough to wait. They had been watching the Ironveil for centuries. They knew how the Iron Host fought. They had measured them. They had prepared. And the Ironveil had no idea. Xyler's communicator pulsed against their chest. A signal, urgent. They raised the device to their ear. The voice of Ren, the defense officer on the current of becoming, came through tight and sharp. "Ambassador, you need to hear this." The channel went silent for a moment. Then Ren spoke again. "We are picking up an incoming transmission. It is not from the free systems. It is from the Ironveil fleet. They are 12 hours away. They are coming with overwhelming force." Xyler lowered the communicator. They looked at Soren. They looked at Ilara. Soren's thumb traced the spine of his journal. His expression did not change. The bridge of the Entelechy glowed in the soft purple light of the Nebula. No emergency lighting now. No alarms. The crew sat at their stations, faces calm and focused. Soren stood near the main viewport, his journal closed in his hand. He could feel the faint vibration of the ship's systems through the deck plates. Ilara stood at the center of the bridge. She straightened her tunic. She tapped 2 fingers against her collarbone once. Then she opened a channel. "I am Dr. Ilara Finch of the human vessel Entelechy," she said. Her voice carried across the bridge speakers, clean and steady. "We are a survey vessel operating in the quiet zone. We have no hostile intent. We wish to avoid conflict." The silence stretched for 3 full seconds. A voice came back, flat, mechanical, no warmth at all. "Submit or be erased." Ilara closed the channel. She turned to face Soren. Her expression did not change. "What do you think?" she asked. Soren met her eyes. He had watched the Ironveil scout. He had studied its movements, its logic, its perfect, inhuman patience. "They will not negotiate," he said. "They are machines, they calculate, they have already decided." Ilara nodded once, a small motion final. "Activate the Ghost Protocol." The bridge crew moved. Hands went to consoles. Fingers pressed sequences Soren had never seen. Commands appeared on screens in symbols he did not recognize. Systems powered up in places he had not known existed. The Entelechy changed. Soren felt it first through the deck. a shift in the ship's vibration, a deeper thrum. Then he saw it on the main display. The ship's energy signature flickered, it flattened. It became a single pure line, a signal carrying no heat and no waste. The ship was no longer a vessel, it was a broadcast station. He turned to Ilara. "What is the Ghost Protocol?" Ilara did not look away from the main display. Her voice remained calm. "It is a message," she said. "A demonstration, not a weapon." She opened a channel on the subspace relay. Not to the Ironveil, to every system in the free systems, to every species. The relay hummed as it powered up. A pure crystalline tone filled the bridge. Ilara spoke. "I am Dr. Ilara Finch of the human species. We have watched your galaxy for 3,000 years. We have seen every war, every extinction, every mistake. We have not intervened because we believed in growth through struggle. We believed that conflict produced strength, that suffering forged wisdom." She paused, her voice did not waver. "The Ironveil are not a natural species. They are a mistake, a runaway logic, and humanity will no longer watch." Soren felt the words settle into him. 3,000 years. His people had been here silent and patient while empires rose and fell, while species burned, while the Ironveil built their perfect, terrible war machine. Ilara continued. "Ironveil fleet, you have 12 hours. In that time, the Entelechy will broadcast the complete tactical and strategic history of every conflict you have ever fought. Your weaknesses, your blind spots, your supply chains, your manufacturing hubs, everything." The bridge crew worked in silence. Data streamed across their screens. The subspace relay hummed louder. Soren watched the main display. The Ironveil fleet had changed course. They were accelerating. A new estimate appeared on the tactical plot. They would arrive in 4 hours now. Ilara saw it too. She did not flinch. "Keep broadcasting," she said. Soren stood at the viewport. The purple nebula glowed through the glass, unchanged, indifferent. The same nebula had looked like this for 10,000 years. It would look like this for 10,000 more. But the galaxy was different now. He understood what Ilara had done. She had not attacked the Ironveil. She had given their enemies the tools to do it themselves. The free systems would know how to fight. They would know where to strike. They would know how to win. Humanity would not lead the war. They would enable it. Soren turned away from the viewport. He opened his journal. He began to write. "The Ghost Protocol is not a weapon. It is a door. We have opened it. What walks through is not our choice. It is the consequence of 3,000 years of silence. We watched, we recorded, we waited, and now we have spoken. The correction has begun." He closed the journal. He looked at Ilara. The bridge was silent. The crew moved with quiet precision, every action deliberate, every command final. Ilara stood at the center of it all. Her face was calm, her hands were steady. Soren walked to her side. "They will not stop," he said. "The Ironveil, they will not surrender." Ilara nodded. "I know. Then what happens after?" She looked at him, her eyes held something he had not seen before. Not fear, not hope, something older. "The free systems will fight," she said. "They will win or they will lose. That is not our war. Our war was the silence, and it is over." The tactical plot updated. The Ironveil fleet had entered weapons range. A volley of energy lances streaked across the void. They struck the Entelechy's kinetic barrier. The ship shuddered. Alarms flared and died as the crew silenced them. The ship did not fire back. The subspace relay continued to hum. The data continued to pour out. Soren watched the display. He saw the Ironveil ships closing. He saw their weapons cycling for another volley. And he saw something else, flickering at the edge of the system. Signals, dozens of them, ships jumping in from across the free systems. They had heard the broadcast. They were coming to see. They were coming to fight. Ilara saw them too. She allowed herself a single breath. "Keep broadcasting," she said. "Do not stop until the channel goes dark." Soren did not look away from the display. The purple nebula glowed beyond the ships. The Entelechy floated at the edge of everything, ancient and small and impossibly patient. The Ironveil ships fired again. The kinetic barrier held, and the galaxy listened. The observation deck of the Entelechy looked the same cold, recycled air, the same dim purple glow from the nebula beyond the viewport, the same faint vibration through the deck plates. The hum of the void sail worked somewhere deep in the ship's bones. 3 days since the broadcast. 3 days since Ilara Finch opened humanity's long silence and let everything pour out. Soren Voss stood at the viewport with his journal in his hand. He had not written in it since the transmission ended. He had nothing left to record. He had already written down what mattered. The witness had filed his testimony. The Ironveil fleet was gone. They had arrived in system with full battle formation. They had expected a single damaged ship and a soft target. They found something else. The broadcast had already reached 100 free systems worlds before the first Ironveil lance fired. The data was too valuable, too precise. The supply line coordinates, the refueling schedules, the gap in the Ironveil defensive grid. No one had ever mapped it. The free systems began hitting those targets within hours. The Ironveil fleet withdrew before engaging the Entelechy. The first volley was never fired. Xyler stood near the far end of the observation deck. Their skin had settled into a steady pale gray. They spoke without turning around. The war has already turned. Soren waited. Xyler turned to face him, their three eyes fixed on Soren's face. The Ironveil are losing ground. They cannot fight an enemy that knows their every move. The data you sent is a weapon. It is working. Soren asked if Xyler felt grateful. Xyler's skin flickered blue. I am grateful, but I am also confused. Why did humanity wait so long? Why did you not help sooner? Soren looked at the journal in his hand. I do not have an easy answer. Humanity believed in letting other species grow on their own terms. Interference would have weakened the free systems. We thought patience was the right choice. He paused. His thumb traced the worn leather spine. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe we waited too long. The observation deck door opened. Ilara Finch walked in. She looked older. The lines around her eyes were deeper. Her movements were slower than they had been 3 days ago. She stood beside Soren. She looked out at the nebula. Humanity made a choice, she said. We chose to break the silence. The choice cannot be unmade. The galaxy will never see us the same way again. Xyler asked what happened now. Ilara did not look away from the purple light. We will stay. We will help. We will not fight directly, but we will provide information. We will be the quiet watchers no longer. She paused. We will be the remembered ones. Soren opened his journal. He wrote in careful script. Humanity has ended its long observation. We have stepped into the light. The galaxy is about to change. He wrote the date, the time, the coordinates of the nebula. He wrote that Ilara Finch had spoken the words that broke the silence. That Xyler of the Gildan race had been the first to hear them, that the Ironveil had withdrawn, that the war was not over, that something new had begun. He closed the journal. The observation deck was quiet. The hum of the void sail was steady. The nebula did not care. Xyler's communication implant pulsed. They went still. Their skin shifted a deep, slow blue. Soren watched them. Xyler spoke without looking up. The message is from my consortium. The free systems are forming a new alliance. Ilara turned from the viewport. Xyler continued. They are asking humanity to join. Soren felt something shift in his chest. Not as a member, he said. Xyler shook their head. As a founder. The silence stretched. Xyler looked at Soren. Their skin settled back to gray. The blue veins were visible at the edges. I understand now. I expected humanity to be a hidden empire, a savior, a threat, something familiar, but you are none of those things. You are a third force, ancient, patient, and now involved. They stared with all three eyes. The galaxy will never be the same, and you have chosen. Soren felt the weight of 1,400 years. The weight of every generation that had watched and waited and never intervened. Ilara spoke softly. We chose because we had to, not because we wanted to. She looked at Xyler. The Ironveil would have destroyed you. They would have destroyed us. We could not watch that happen. Xyler asked why not. You have watched for centuries. You have watched species die before. Ilara did not answer. Soren answered instead. Because this time we were in the room, because this time they fired at us, because we could not look away and still call ourselves observers. He looked at his journal. The whole point of watching was to know when to stop. The observation deck fell quiet again. The hum of the void sail filled the space. Soren looked at the nebula. The same purple glow, the same eternal light, but something had changed. The ship had changed. The crew had changed. He had changed. He had spent decades recording, decades documenting, decades standing at the edge of history and writing it down. He had never stood inside it before. He opened his journal one more time. He wrote a single line. The quiet is over. He closed the journal. He tucked it into his coat. He stood up. Ilara watched him. Where are you going? I have been a witness long enough. I want to be a participant. He walked toward the door. Xyler called after him. What will you do now? Soren stopped. He looked back at the Gildan, at the shifting gray skin, at the three eyes that had seen humanity for the first time and would never forget. I do not know yet, but I will find out. He stepped through the door. The corridor was dark. The walls were cold. The air was thin and recycled. He walked toward the bridge. The hum of the void sail followed him. The vibration through the deck plates was steady. The ship was alive and moving and carrying him forward. He passed a maintenance alcove. The repair drone swarm pulsed softly in its chamber. The warm smell of wet earth met him for a moment and faded. He kept walking. He reached the bridge door. He did not stop to think. He did not look back. He pressed the panel. The door opened. The bridge was lit in low amber. The crew were at their stations. The subspace relay glowed faintly in its housing. The view through the forward viewport showed the nebula, the purple light, the stars beyond. Soren stepped inside. He took the station nearest the communications array. He sat down. He had no formal training for this console. He had never operated it before. He was a witness, a recorder, a historian. He put his hands on the controls. He opened a channel to the Gildan ship. He opened a channel to the Free Systems relay network. He opened a channel to the approaching Alliance ships. They were even now moving toward the nebula. He did not know what he would say, but he would say something. Alara walked onto the bridge behind him. She stopped at the edge of his station. Soren. He did not turn around. I am done watching. The bridge was quiet. The nebula was quiet. The galaxy beyond the viewport was anything but. Soren Voss opened his mouth to speak into the channel. The words would come. The galaxy would listen. The quiet was over and the future had not yet written itself.